Oh hey, welcome back to the Creative Collector. So in today's video, I'm going to show you the remix of skin tones. That's right, I got a couple of other little small tweaks that I did to my skin tones to make them that much better. Only this time, I'm going to show you what I primered with, what I sealed it with, and each individual paint that I used, and there's really no mixing involved. The models that we're going to be using today are some heads from Wicked 3D. We're going to be using the Kingpin, Craven, and we're also going to take a look at a finished Juggernaut as well. And today's video is sponsored by no one. So if you want to be a sponsor, hit me up in the message below. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into the video right now. So today's subjects are going to be two sculpts printed in two different resins. So this one is the Kingpin from Wicked, and this one is the Craven from Wicked. The Craven is printed in a beige resin from Sunlu, and Kingpin is printed in a gray standard resin from Sunlu. So these are raw prints, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to prep them. So I want to look at any type of minor imperfections that you might see, maybe some support divots or something like that that's on here, some of the nipples on here. I've already pre-sanded some of this stuff off the bottom for time's sake on the video. And then what I'm going to do is once I get everything sanded, I like to go over, I have this kind of like a rough brush right here. It's real thick, real coarse, and I'll actually go in and kind of get any type of dust or anything like that that might be in the cracks and crevices. And you can see Kingpin has a lot here. And then once I get all that done, I'll take this makeup brush here and I'll go back through and I'll just dust everything off. This way, when I put my primer on, I don't have any of this trash that's going to come out from underneath it. Another thing that you want to make sure that you do is, if you're not wearing gloves, make sure your hands are clean and free of any oils, because once you put primer on here, it can bubble up if you have oils and stuff on your skin. So with Craven, I pretty much have the same thing that I'm going to do, but since he has hair and there's a lot of texture in here, again, I'm going to go through and brush out any of this stuff that may be in here, just little dust or, you know, pieces of resin or whatever from when you were sanding. It's very crucial to get this stuff out of all these cracks and crevices and stuff. And then of course I'll use my makeup brush to get any of the residual off of here. So next thing is one of the most important steps that we have here, and that's primer. And I'll show you a couple of things that I use and what I recommend. So my go-to primer is this right here. It's out of a can. It's this Krylon Color Max. This stuff is thin enough but yet not thick enough to where you'll get really good coverage on it. It won't gum up your model or anything like that. It actually allows the details to really pop out. The second one that I use is the Vallejo surface primer here. This is a black, but they do make different colors as well. This goes on really, really smooth through an airbrush. You do have to thin it out a little bit, I think. Some people spray it straight. I usually thin it out. I apply a couple of thin layers, but this also works really, really good. Now, if I am using light skin type of flesh tones, I will use this white primer here from Color Max, especially on female sculpts. This works really, really good. It allows those colors to filtrate through, and it's really, really nice. But this is an alternative that you can use if you don't want to go with a darker skin tone. So one kind of primer to avoid, especially on heads, is this 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer here. This stuff sprays out really, really thick. It can hide your details. It can gum up your model pretty good. You really want to get your surface prepped really, really well. That way the details actually pop out and you're not covering stuff up with primer. This primer is really good whenever you're using it on FDM, things like that. But keep in mind, when you're using resin, you got a lot of fine details, and the best thing that you want to do is get a very thin coat. That way the paint will actually stick rather than peel, or just not stick at all to the model. All right, so here we go with the primer applied. On the Kingpin, I use the gray, and on the Craven here, I use the white. I'm going to show you the difference when we use the same base color, the difference in the tint on each one. And for both of these models, we're going to use just the basic skin tone. We're not going to mix anything. We're just going to use it straight out of the bottle. So the airbrush I'm going to be using is this Gallery Ace series right here. Thank you guys for sending this over. I will be doing a full-on review of all of the Gallery series very, very shortly. But let's get to cracking. So here we have both heads painted with the basic flesh tone. As you can see, it's a pretty good skin tone for a base coat. You probably can't tell it from the video, but the actual Craven sculpt here has a little bit lighter tint than the Kingpin due to the primer. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to seal these. That way, if I have to handle them, I won't smudge or peel any paint off or scratch them or anything like that. So lots of people have asked what I seal the models with, and I kind of go over this in some of the videos, but this is what I use. This is a rattle can, yes. It's the Krylon Color Max Clear I've been telling everybody about. This is like $5 a can that goes a long way. You could get it like in a Lowe's or Home Depot or even Walmart for that matter. Now I know that a lot of the overseas countries do not have this, and you can use an actual Vallejo flat, which is a real good, just as good as this right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to seal these two heads, and then you'll see the colors come out a little bit more. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use this transparent yellow and this transparent red right here. I'm going to water these down really good, come up with a really good solution, and slather them all over the head sculpt. One of each, and then I'm going to basically sponge all this off, and I'm going to get this transparent paint to bite into there so we get a really good complexion of the skin tone. So first we're going to start with the yellow. And to take it off of here, I'm actually going to use a slightly damp paper towel. I use this better than a sponge because I can actually get into it a little bit better, and I can actually you know, get into the cracks and the crevices and stuff with the corner of the paper towel. Not to mention sponges sometimes leave a little bit of like crumbs, or I call them crumbs, behind, and that can just mess up your paint job altogether. And for these deep recesses, you can actually just get a Q-tip and dab all this stuff out. And now we're going to do the same thing with the red. So after that, you can see that the Kingpin has a slightly different tint to the Craven sculpt here that has not had this treatment. So the next thing I want to move on to is freckling. Now how do we do that? Hold on, I'll tell you. So the first thing you're going to want to do is turn your PSI down to about 5. Maybe even lower. You're just going to have to kind of wing it a little bit. But I turn mine down to about 5, and that's usually pretty good. So the first layer I'm going to use is this flesh base right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and actually use thinner. I'm going to thin this down really, really good. So for this, I am probably going to use about 5% paint and about 95% thinner. I want to get it pretty thin. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is get like a plain sheet of paper so I can practice off of. And basically you're just going to go in spurts, and you're going to see like a lot of freckling here on this paper. This is what it's going to look like on your model. So I think this is pretty good. Let's give it a whirl. So the one thing that you don't want to do is saturate it too much like this. And you're just going to hold it back a little bit and give it a few spurts. And you can do it all over. You can do it in certain points if you want. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see a lot of that once it's dried. However, if you add too much, you can always go back with a Q-tip and swab some of this off before it dries. Now for this next part, you got to be pretty careful with it because we're going to use a little bit darker tone here. This is this Game Color dark flesh tone. We're going to do it the same exact way. We're going to thin it down pretty good. And then we're going to also practice on our sheet of paper right here. All right, so here we are practicing a little bit, kind of getting the consistency that we want. And then we'll move on to our model. All right, so here we have Kingpin. Let's give it a whirl here. Now on this right here, you don't have to put near as much as you did with the last. All right, and if I give it one look over, and if I see an area that I just don't like, if it's too much, I'll just take a cotton swab and just dab it off here. If it kind of dries on you a little bit, get you a little bit of thinner on a cotton swab, and it'll come right off. See that little area right there? Just take it right off. So the next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna use this pink right here from the Mecha Color in Vallejo's line of Mecha Colors, and then I'm going to do some little bit of shading, and I'm going to do some highlighting. I'm going to basically circle around the nose, the eye sockets, the lips, the earlobes, the just different parts where there would be shadows and there would be like some lights. Like if you look at your skin, you would see like different pinkish areas and stuff, and that's what we're going for right here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start on the eyes. And for that, I'm actually going to use this Pro Acryl Ivory right here. I found that this color is a little bit more warmer and not so bright for the eyeball, and it just makes it a little bit more realistic. So another little tip for the eyes, once you get those done, if you want to, you can go back and use that same red that you used for the layer of the skin, the little transparent layer, and you can actually use that for like some bloodshot effects in the eyeball. So now I'm going to use a little bit of this smoky ink right here to put the eyelashes and a little bit of the hair up under the eyebrow. So now we're at the final point to where we'll just go in and add the pupil and the iris to the eye. And then once we get all done, we put the gloss on the eyes, and here you have it. And here's a couple of other heads that I did in this similar fashion. This is the Craven head once it's all completed. And of course, here is Juggernaut. All right, everybody, I hope that helped you out with your skin tones for your next model. Make sure to give us a like and maybe subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content or if you like this video. Plus, think about sharing it to your friends or whatever. And once again, I want to thank all of you for watching the video, but I also want to thank my Patreon members. We have a few new ones this week. Let's see who we got. Let's say hello to Gregory King, The Dark Pickle. What kind of name is that? Alexander McKenna, Xander Niehoff, Niehoff, Mark McGuire, James O'Brien, Chris Gibson, Brent, David Lazio, Mike Doherty, Ivo Von Hook, Richard Evans, Andreas, Christopher Thomas, Ernest Martinez, Mayral Sheik, Jekyll, not Jackal, Jekyll, that's what it says, Cayenne 1723, The Devil's in Details, Christopher Shepard, Alexis Suarez, Mike, just good old Mike, Mark Burgess, and Anthony Wells. Thank you guys so much for being part of the Patreon and being the newest members. And if you're interested in the Patreon, the link is below in the description. Don't forget our model of the month that we got coming up for the month of September, where we will not have just one, but we will have 2 models. Go check out what models are on the Patreon page, and yeah, pretty cool stuff. And of course, if you're not down with the whole Patreon thing or whatever, I still want to thank you very much just for watching the video, even if you didn't probably watch it all the way through. I don't care, you watched some of it, you clicked on the damn thing, so thank you. And yes, you know the drill, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave us some comments if you want. Good interaction helps with the channel, getting it in front of people who might not see it. So until then, everybody, stay safe out there, get out and create something, print, paint, repeat. And until the next video, we'll see you, or see ya. Don't worry guys, I have not forgot about this one. It is coming up very, very soon, I promise.